Hello everyone, I'm Scott Logan, Vice President of Marketing at Enghouse Interactive Americas. Thank you for joining today's webinar, Preparing for the Customer Experience-Driven Future in Utilities. First, some housekeeping notes for the event. The recording and slides will be sent in the days following the webinar, and we'll have a Q&A session at the end of the presentation, so please submit your questions as you think of them. Now for some brief introductions. Reed Paquin is a research analyst at Aberdeen Research Group. He studies how manufacturing enterprises manage process, people, and technologies to address continually changing market pressures. His current research focuses on many topics on the plant floor, areas such as corporate sustainability, includes energy management, quality management, asset management, risk management, and industrial networking. The other presenter is Simon Adnet, with us at Enghouse Interactive, a senior technical consultant. He's a solutions specialist with over 15 years in the industry. Simon has experience in both enterprise contact center transformation projects and within the energy sector, control room deployments for management and infrastructure and outage planning, transmission, and energy distribution. So at this point, I'll go ahead and pass the presentation over to Reed and Simon.
Thanks, Scott, and thank you everyone who could attend today's webinar, which is going to focus on a topic that's rising in importance in energy and utilities, which is customer experience management. So now let's just dive right into the agenda for today's webinar. We just got part of the introductions out of the way, but I also want to give everyone some additional context for how Aberdeen conducts its research and the data that I'm going to be presenting today. Then we're going to split up the presentation into three sections. The first, focusing on the landscape that energy and utilities firms are dealing with while operating today. Next, we'll take a look at leaders in the industry. We're going to explore what constitutes leader performance and then what also separates them from their peers. After that, we're going to explore the path to happy customers. And really this section has three main parts as well. The first centered on injecting customer-centric thinking into a historically operationally focused culture. This will be followed by the need to break down data silos and how successful companies accomplish this. Then finally, the importance of taking all the data that's being generated today and turning it into actionable intelligence. And then finally, we're going to wrap it up with some overall key takeaways from the presentation and the opportunity, as Scott said, for a Q&A section. So actually, before we get started, we're going to kick it off with a poll question. I'll turn it back over to you, Scott, to run this poll.
Certainly, it helps if I'm not on mute. Is connecting the control and contact centers something you have looked into to improve the customer experience or your customer experience? We found a lot of times that they're separated and use different technologies, though they both have information that each other could find useful. So we'll go ahead and allow a few seconds for this poll to take place, and then we'll take a look at where our audience stands before we move forward, as that will be one of the points that we will cover. So it looks like there's still a few folks in progress on this.
Yeah, this will be a good question to have because later on we're going to touch on this with the research that Aberdeen found. So it'll be interesting to see where the attendees for today's webinar stand to what Aberdeen collected in its study.
All right, this is the very overwhelmingly majority of the audience who submitted results. So I'll go ahead and close the poll, and I'll share the results here. All right, so we've talked about this topic before, but we haven't had this high of a response where so many people are focused on it. So we have 38% say yes, we're currently working on it or have done it, and yes, we have, but we have not yet initiated the project. And then about 25% or a little more have actually not have this on the radar, or they haven't started the project.
Yeah, those are some interesting results. It's a little bit higher than what we're seeing when we poll the industry, but it's good to see that there's a large focus on this, because really that's going to be the crux of this webinar on why this is important and why you should be looking into this. So it's good to see about 2/3 of everyone attending today saying that either it's something they're working on or something that they're going to be initiating soon.
Absolutely. So I'll have the poll go away if you want to pop the presentation back up, and we'll continue on. All right, Reed, you should be able to move your slides again.
Sorry about that. I was on mute. What I was saying is I want to focus on Aberdeen's methodology to let everyone know, how we collect our research and where it comes from. So Aberdeen has a large end-user-based community. And in this case, we're focusing on energy and utilities companies. And what we do is we send out surveys based on what we call a PACE methodology, which simply stands for pressures, actions, capabilities, and enablers. So pressures are what's causing organizations to think differently about a problem. Actions are the strategies that they're going to undertake to respond to those pressures. And then capabilities and enablers are what do they have in their business, how is their company structured, or what are they focusing on to allow those actions to be carried out to address those pressures. At the same time, we ask a lot of metrics in our surveys to determine how companies are performing. And what we do is we take the aggregate performance on those metrics, and in this case we split up the companies into two groups: energy leaders and energy followers. And the leaders are solely the top 33% for the aggregate performance for these metrics, while the followers are the bottom 67%. So essentially what we do is we take a look at the leaders and go back to that PACE framework and take a look and see what are the capabilities and enablers that the leaders have to perform better than their peers. And that's essentially what we do is we try to focus on that leaders group to see what's making them perform better than the followers. If there's any questions about the research that I'm presenting, I can obviously be followed up as an email to let you know for any of the demographics or anything like that. So, now that we got the introductions out of the way, let's start with the backdrop. What's the environment that energy and utilities companies are operating in? And as you can see here, the energy sector has traditionally been focused on operational goals. So this is the top pressures that are driving companies. So things like the need to ensure compliance, decrease asset downtime, and managing the workforce are all top concerns. And while managers in all industries are grappling with visibility into and control over a multitude of risks, those in the energy and utilities industry have increased intricacies to deal with, just solely because of the operating environment they're in. So really these organizations have to be flexible, well-organized, and agile enough to quickly react to adverse events such as weather issues or shifts in the marketplace. In addition, really stringent compliance and regulatory requirements, adding concerns around safety, asset reliability, and reporting. So this all points to the fact that the top driver among these companies is still the need to reduce the impact of operational risks like non-compliance and asset failure. And it's really not a surprise because only one of these incidents can really cripple an entire organization. However, there is a shift underway in the industry that we're seeing with these results. As you can see, I've called out specifically the second pressure on this chart, which is the need to improve customer satisfaction. Aberdeen Research has seen this pressure rise on the executive's agenda in recent years, and really this is going to be a focal point for this webinar today. And why is that? Well, in fact, if we take a look at trend analysis from Aberdeen's data, we see that the need to improve customer satisfaction has almost doubled over the past 3 years. Today, consumers are more empowered and demand more from their interactions. Increased competition has resulted in customers that demand more from their energy providers. Really, this means that energy firms must rethink the way that they're handling customer interactions. These organizations have historically been primarily driven by operational demands, as we saw earlier. But today, energy firms need to build and nurture a customer-centric culture to please their clients while maximizing operational and financial results. So with this increased focus on the customer, the natural question to ask is the industry prepared to deal with this rising pressure, this concern around the customer? Taking a look at the chart here on slide 10 reveals that this may be a problem. This chart shows functional areas within the business that are treated proactively. And when it comes to operational concerns, clearly the energy industry is doing a much better job than all other industries that Aberdeen polled. And whether it's asset management, maintenance, compliance, safety, or production management, the energy industry has a large focus on managing the risks associated with these areas. However, there's clearly a disconnect between operations and the customer when looking at the energy industry. Only 21% of respondents take some form of proactive management when it comes to the customer. Almost half that when looking at other industries. And this is going to be an issue going forward if action's not taken to bridge this gap. So, the rise of the empowered customer and how companies respond to this new normal has changed the dynamics in many industries before this. But now it's time for energy and utilities to tackle this question. Really, it's savvy energy firms that differentiate themselves in the long run by establishing and nurturing close ties with their customers. And really, this increased focus on the customer has led to questions being posed that these decision makers in the industry haven't really answered before. So things like who's responsible for the customer experience, how are we performing as an organization when it comes to keeping customers happy, and ultimately, how can we improve that performance? Luckily for energy and utilities organizations, customer experience management is a well-established field featuring numerous tried and true best practices that help organizations tackle these questions. So that leads into the actions, the second part of how Aberdeen conducts its survey. So these are the things that energy respondents are saying they're going to do to try to deal with their customer experience issues. And it starts with establishing and enforcing a framework that's consistent with policies and procedures, which isn't a surprise. You've got to have something in place, a framework, to carry out these actions. Then closely following that, the second action is establishing real-time interoperability across enterprise systems. So we led up with that poll question between the contact center and the control center. So connecting, systems is going to be a big piece of this. And as we'll see later on, it's something that successful companies really focus on. And then the final piece is establishing a formalized strategy to manage change. So there's a lot of change that happens within these companies, and it's really the ones that are most set up to adapt and respond to that change are going to be the ones that are most successful. So this takes us into the next section, which is really focusing on the leaders. Who's successful? What are they doing? How are they performing? In this slide here, this chart table on the slide is showing the leader versus follower performance for the metrics that we selected. So the strategies that I just discussed help companies better handle their customer interactions, but carrying out these actions is another matter. So just looking at this table, it's easy to see that leaders are doing a much better job at pleasing and retaining their customers. And really the superior performance shows itself when looking at the financial performance of these groups as well, as leaders have a much higher increase in annual revenue and operating margins. Now, keep this table in the back of your mind as I go through what I'm going to be presenting and showing you. If your company isn't quite performing at the level of a leader, you should you should consider some of the steps and actions that we're going to be discussing, because it's obviously led to success. Also, I thought it's important to point out the operational performance of these two groups as well. So unscheduled asset downtime, safety incidents, audits, and compliance costs are all being handled better by the leaders. The point I really want to get across is the fact that operational goals do not have to be sacrificed in your journey for customer experience management. And really, the leaders are clearly accomplishing both goals at the same time and are reaping the benefits of this approach. So seeing this table begs the question to be asked, what is it that leaders are doing to enjoy such superior performance? And leaders start by injecting customer-centric thinking into what has really historically been an operationally focused culture. So first among those is establishing a dedicated executive role who is responsible and accountable for overseeing the company-wide CEM activities. So as you can see here, it's almost in line with what Aberdeen calls the best in class, which is across all industries. Those are the very top performers. That's what everyone wants to strive to be. And you can see energy leaders aren't too far behind. And establishing such an executive role will help energy firms have a formal commitment to satisfy customers, as well as echo their needs in the boardroom to ensure business activities are tailored to address them. And once energy firms establish an executive level commitment and role to manage customer experience, they must also ensure that the customer focus is weaved within the very fabric of the organization. from technicians and energy plants to customer service representatives. And really, energy leaders establish this by enabling and encouraging collaboration across different silos in the business. Such a collaborative work environment helps employees share timely and relevant insight to identify and address customer needs. And really, this also has a beneficial, it can be beneficial to business, those employees with operational issues, as it allows companies to promptly fix those as well. And one area where leaders and followers need to drive improvement is in their use of templatized customer communications materials. As you can see here at the end of the chart, over half of the best-in-class companies use this templated approach, compared to less than a quarter of the energy industry as a whole doing the same thing. So now this leads us into, what is it that, the path to happy customers, what can be done?
Hey Reed, do you mind if I ask a quick polling question of everybody here, just to see what the audience is, what their gauge is on what's causing the increased focus on customer service? I'm going to go ahead and launch this, and if you have something different than what we've selected here, go ahead and select other. But this is something that we face a lot, and we're wondering what the main driver is from, some data that since we have all of you captive right now. All right, everyone's voting very feverishly right now, so thank you for participating. All right, looks like, again, we have almost everyone voting, so we'll go ahead and close it out. And about a fourth of everyone says it is due to new competitors, but almost everyone says it's because increase in customer expectations. And I think that is very much in line with what we're seeing just in the general customer service space for any industry.
Yeah, we see the same thing when we do these surveys. It's really that, that empowered customer that we talk about. Really, they expect more out of their interactions today.
All right, thanks. So we'll go ahead and jump to assignment section.
Well, hi everyone. I just wanted to start with just a quick introduction on Enghouse Interactive and who we are and where we fit into this. And I guess the quickest way of summarizing it is that we're a technology provider around customer engagement. And if we look at the sorts of areas that we focus on, we try to address a number of the areas that you're going to see Reed identify through his sections in here, and I'm going to chip in at a few places and talk around some of the things we've seen customers doing, some of the technologies we have to assist in these areas as well, and some of the things we're doing. But very much we focus on these key areas, and we do that through some assisted services, so traditional things like contact centers and attendant operator solutions where you've got a customer engaging with an individual in your organization, but also around control room solutions, and I'll touch a little bit later on in this session around some of the things we do in the control room space as well. But also things like self-service and knowledge management, so really providing information to your customers rather than waiting for them to come and demand it from you, if you like. And then we also provide solutions around quality management and workforce optimization, so really measurement of the experience that your customers are getting, and integration services as well. And that's a key area that's going to keep cropping up, is how you link systems together and get the flow of information through your organization optimized. So really the four key areas I'm going to focus on when I talk are really empowering your customers, so giving them the ability to get access to the information they want when they want it, connecting the systems and and departments within your organization together, engaging more with your customers, so being more proactive about the way that you engage with them rather than waiting for them to contact you, and also looking at ways you can measure your performance as far as your customers are concerned, and how you can use that information to then improve the service you're giving them as well.
Yeah, thanks for that, Simon. So just jumping back to what I'm going to present, and you'll see a lot of crossover here, but I wanted to start off or continue by talking about, multi-channels. So from some of the CEM research that we do, an important finding shows that 100% of companies polled use multiple channels to interact with customers, and an average business uses 4 channels as part of their channel mix. And one of the biggest challenges faced by companies using multiple channels, to communicate with customers, is ensuring that the messages being delivered across the channels are consistent with the messages clients receive through previous interactions. And really, failure to do so will result in confusing the customer, damaging the company brand, and can even lead to potential litigation. That leads us into slide 22, which highlights the capabilities to adopt, omni-channel communication. So first, you can see energy leaders are more likely than followers to ensure that they deliver a consistent customer message across multiple channels. Use of technology tools such as CRM and ERP provide energy firms with the ability to capture and store multi-channel insights through a centralized system that's made available to relevant stakeholders in the business. In addition, leaders are more likely to identify hidden trends and correlations driving a client who contacted the business for a service issue to make additional purchases, while also their needs addressed. And then finally, while it's low among both groups, leaders do a better job of tracking changes in customer sentiment so they can better deliver proactive customer care. Really, multi-channel interactions, it's the new normal when it comes to business and the customer experience. However, the energy and utilities industry as a whole really has a lot of ground to make up, as you can see, just taking a look at the best in class compared to the energy industry as a whole.
Yeah, and so just following on from that point that Reed's made, really, this kind of leads straight into what I set out as empowering customers. And there's a couple of angles to that, really. One is empowering them to self-serve. So we've got some examples here of customers where we've given them the opportunity to allow customers to do account management and bill payment through self-service rather than having to speak to an agent, for example. But empowerment also can be around how customers contact you, and there's this really 3 areas which we look at, which are anytime, anywhere, and anyhow. And it's really that concept that customers might decide they want to speak to you at any time during the day, and they may be anywhere, so they may be out and about and on a mobile device, for example, rather than a traditional telephone handsets at home, for example. And anyhow, and that's something that's becoming more and more common, and that leads into what Reed was saying around multi-channel, is the methods that customers are using to contact organizations is becoming much more varied. Customers are wanting to pick the channels that they prefer to use, and so they're expecting much more variety in the ways that they can contact businesses. And one of the things I just want to focus on here is around sort of self-service and some of the things we can do around mobile IVRs as well, and mobile applications. And so combining those 2 things, you can allow for self-service through mobile applications where customers can manage account information and make bill payments, for example. They could look at energy utilization, how much energy they've used over the last year or the last 6 months compared to previous years, for example. But you can also use that for sending proactive notifications to customers, so letting them know information around, well, we've actually got a planned outage in your area over the next 2 days, and there'll be a power outage for up to an hour at a time, for example, while we do some maintenance work. Telling them that information or maybe letting them know that their energy usage is particularly high over a period, and they may want to look at what's going on there. But again, interaction, so maybe if they're looking at something on their account and that flags up something that maybe makes them want to contact you and have a discussion around it, then providing them with options within that mobile application that allows them to choose how they contact you. So maybe start a chat, or maybe actually send a notification into the contact center to say, I'd like somebody to call me to discuss my account, for example. So again, it's just providing them with options. But one of the advantages of self-service is it can empower the customer, and it makes them feel like they have control over the way they get access to information. But at the same time, it can actually reduce costs because the customer's serving themselves rather than you have to have an agent on the phone with them talking them through everything that they're doing. So it can be beneficial.
I think a key component to that too is what you touched on at the very beginning, where the integrated systems is something that is incredibly important, because you want that agent to be able to have a viewpoint into what they're doing, your customer's doing online. You don't want them to be working online doing, looking at notifications, checking their emails, and then the agent not know if they've received those same communications and has to run through them again. So I think you'll allude to that here shortly, but I just wanted to put extra stress on that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the other things is that when you've got all these different channels of communication coming into your organization, it needs some serious consideration around how you manage that. And it may sound simple, but one of the key things really is just having a concept of a universal queue or a global queue. So really, whatever the demands that are coming into the organization and whatever channel they're coming in through, you've got a single place that you can manage that demand that's coming from the customers and distribute it out across the people in the organization that are going to manage that. So, you know, whether it's phone calls or whether it's emails or voicemails they're leaving, or whether it's web chats or contact through social media, having the ability to have that come into one place where you can prioritize, sort, and distribute that, and then measure that work actually gets done and the customer's inquiry is dealt with as well, is key.
All right, so we have another polling question here. I'll go ahead and pull it up. What is your current omni-channel customer service strategy? Planning to move to an omni-channel customer service, what we were just talking about? Are you in the process of moving to omni-channel customer service? You currently have it, but it could improve, or it's a well-oiled machine. Now I see here, if you don't have it, obviously you'll be choosing that first selection, but just to give some clarification, the primary definition between omni-channel and multi-channel, if you haven't heard a clear definition of it, is multi-channel is having multiple channels that you can interact with. So you can answer emails, but it's through Outlook or an email or web submit form tool. You can answer chat, but it's handled separately through a chat tool that you integrated into your website. And phone is obviously your main phone system that your agent is using. Now, omnichannel is able to pull all those interactions into one queue and prioritize based off of channel, but also to prioritize off of things that are not specific to the channel, like a certain service request or a certain type of customer. And then also able to track those metrics together, so you don't have to pull spreadsheets and combine them and guess on how your metrics are as a whole. So it looks like about 30% of people have voted. Maybe they're waiting for some clarification on that. So hopefully that lets you answer the question of what is omnichannel. Also, if you have,
and I think one of
sorry.
I was just going to say, Scott, I think one of the other key components of it as well is the ability to easily switch between channels if necessary. So, for example, if you do get an inquiry via the web or something, but you need to follow up on that, is maybe the ability to then reply to that initial web conversation with an email that's a follow-on from that conversation, or escalate to a phone conversation if that's necessary. So the ability to seamlessly switch between channels as well.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Good point. So about half the people responded to this one, probably just because of some clarification, but we'll go ahead and release the results regardless. And we have the omni-channel experience could improve by about half of those who responded, and about a fourth of those, or close to a third of those, are looking to improve. A very low percentage already are already there.
Yeah, those are some important findings. I mean, the poll question before touched on it. That, customer expectations are changing, so making sure that you can deliver an omni-channel customer service experience is going to be important moving forward, especially in the energy and utilities industry. So it's good to see a lot of people are focusing on this and realize that there's room for improvement too. And we've talked a lot about systems throughout this webinar, so I just want to touch base and just get the point out there that there's multiple solutions, and really it takes us to the next section of the path to happy customers, which focuses on breaking down data silos. So, as everyone attending this webinar knows, energy firms rely on numerous technology solutions, and it really spans both the OT and the IT groups as well. On the operational side, there's SCADA systems, distribution management, outage management, among others. Then from the IT perspective, there's large enterprise systems like EAM, the field service systems, and customer interaction systems. And the major problem with these solutions is they tend to be standalone with little to no integration. And this results in data silos across the business that really provide a barrier to effective decision making and a lot of wasted time. And in fact, in the same study that we conducted, it was found that on average, employees spend 14% of their time navigating through numerous technology systems to find and access the relevant insights that they need. So switching between those systems that we talked about. And really this wasted time is costly from a productivity standpoint, but it also increases risk, as any delays in response time can turn a minor event into a major problem. So now, to get past this problem, energy leaders focus on connecting these OT and IT systems. So separate research that I've conducted, which focuses on the operational side of energy and utilities industry, consistently shows that integration and interoperability between solutions is necessary for success. So for things like asset management, maintenance, ensuring productivity, integration is crucial. However, we want to focus on the customer systems, since this is such a growing concern for these companies. Well, it turns out that the same importance of integration holds true for customer experience management as well. As you can see, leaders were found to be almost 3 times more likely than followers to integrate the control center and the contact center. Now, the overall adoption is relatively low, which is not a surprise because energy companies, they've really not been focused on this issue for a long period of time. However, the gap between leaders and followers is significant and plays a direct role in the ability to proactively approach customer experience management. Also, in addition, leaders are 80% more likely to have plans in place to undertake this integration in the near future, which is what we're seeing with that poll question earlier. A lot of companies are starting to consider this. And really, breaking down data silos is a critical step to take your customer service efforts to the next level.
Yeah, and we very much see that within Enghouse as a key area as well. And there's very few projects that we're involved with where there isn't an element of integration to really drive the benefits of our platforms. And that'll be linking into a lot of back office systems and process workflows that exist within the organization and looking to optimize those. And that can be providing the agents or the staff with the right information when they need it, and part of that is understanding why the customer is contacting you, what they're contacting you about, so that the right information can be presented to the agent. But that's also how that information then gets shared throughout the business. So every contact, every action that takes place with the customer being recorded, whether it be in a CRM system or a ticketing system, so that you can see the interactions you're having with the customer and manage those sort of holistically from the point of view of all the contacts you have with that customer, but also using that information to drive self-service or notifications as well. So again, if you're planning work, for example, in the area of outage planning, which is something that might take place in the control room, being able to send out proactive notifications to customers about that would naturally reduce the number of inbound calls that you have into the contact center about any outages that customers may experience. And so looking at those areas and linking them together can really have an impact across the organization by joining up systems. And one area for that may be in taking what may be viewed as traditional sort of management you do within the contact center, but actually extending it into the back office as well. And so one of the things we can do, and the next slide shows this, is take interactions that come into the organization but may need to be passed through to other areas of the business and extend that functionality so that you can measure how you're handling those inquiries even when they leave the sort of formal contact center space, where you probably have more management and reporting around those interactions, but actually looking to see how are we handling those inquiries from customers right through our business, so from the moment they arrive through to conclusion as well, and managing the distribution of those. And another area that we look at, and I said I'd touch on it again, is actually the control center as well, the control room. And within the control room, it's maybe a slightly different environment in a contact center. We'd be pushing through interactions, and they may well be forced down to individuals based on the information we know about what the customer's asking about. Whereas in a control center, as the next slide will show, what we can do is we can provide the necessary information to the operators in the control room so that they can make the decisions about which contacts are relevant for them for the job of work that they're involved in. It allows them to set up virtual teams for outage planning and management and distribution work tasks as well. And so what we've aimed to do with our control center client is really provide visibility of that information from across the control room and all the different teams that sit within there, from distribution to sort of outage planning and transmission, and give visibility of the status of teams, activities within them, availability, and also the contacts that are coming in. And in this case, the customers aren't necessarily the end customer, but the customer may be engineers out in the field that are working on infrastructure and need to liaise with control room staff. And so being able to easily flag through color coding and priorities who's contacting, what they're calling about, what it's relation to, and allow the control room operators to make decisions based on that can drive a lot of efficiency in the control center as well. But as that feeds back through outage management systems, then that can drive notifications out to end customers as well around activity that's going on. So that's a key area of focus for us as well, where we see there can be real benefits in that interworking between things that are going on in the control room and how that can impact the customer interaction that's managed through the contact center as well.
Yeah, thanks, Simon. I think there's a lot of points to get across, but there's a lot of tools out there that companies can use to do a better job at managing their customer interactions. And really that's what this slide here, this chart here is showing. Leaders have been focusing on adopting these enablers to better carry out their CEM initiatives. And really the primary focus of these enablers is to improve the decision-making process for your employees. So dashboards are obviously effective tools to help someone quickly digest and interpret large amounts of information. Then if you take those dashboards and combine them with alarms and alerts, it really allows for action to be taken on non-conformances as quickly as possible. This greatly reduces the impact of that event and can mean the difference between a happy and a displeased customer. You know, employees have traditionally spent excessive amounts of time in paper chases or jumping between systems, but now they can focus their attention elsewhere, which will further support and improve proactive customer experience efforts. Really, automating processes is a powerful enabler that energy leaders are turning to for success.
And I would suggest the Enghouse solutions, like you just saw, the touchscreen control room solution or contact center solutions. I figure I can put a plug in there since I'm the host.
No, I'll take your lead and follow on. I mean, one of the things that we see quite a bit more now is in the utilities space, particularly, is trying to proactively contact customers more. So keep them informed with notifications, and that kind of leads into the multi-channel or omni-channel piece as well, because then you're not just looking at inbound interactions that you're trying to manage, it's outbound interactions as well, and that kind of feeds back into these other systems that you have within the organization around customer management, because customers may have a preference around how they want to be informed. They may want to just go to an online page and get updates on their account there. They may want to have SMS messages. They may want to get a notification in the mobile phone app. They may want a phone call. They may want an email. And they may want to set preferences around how they want to be contacted and what they want to be contacted about. And so that's definitely an area to take into consideration if you're considering proactive notification and contact with customers. But again, it's about understanding what's happening in your organization that may affect your customers or may be relevant to them, and then making a decision around what you contact them about and when as well. So linking these systems together is key, really. And that kind of leads us on to the next area, which is visibility around the sort of contact that you've had with your customers. And one of the things there can be just looking at when you've had contact from your customers, what conversations have taken place in the past, maybe what conversations could you be having with your customers as well. And as the next slide shows, that can be presented in a number of ways, but it's really around looking, okay, if I get a contact from the customer, what conversations have taken place with them recently? What activities have happened between us and them? Any transactions? Have they paid any bills recently? Have we sent them an invoice? And that's a combination of interaction management that may have been done through the contact center, for example, but it may be things that are just more general customer relationship managed, like invoicing. And so by linking those systems together, it really gives you a better view of the conversations you're having with your customer and the interactions with them, and why that may influence what they're talking to you about, or what they're talking to you about. For example, if you've just sent them out an invoice and they're calling you about billing, then it may be that they're questioning something on that invoice. And so the more information you have about interactions you've had with them, not just from a conversational point of view, but from a business point of view as well, then agents can be more informed about the conversations that they have with customers. But the same thing actually applies in the control room as well, maybe in a slightly different way. One of the big areas of focus we see in the control room space is around safety as well, particularly if you've got engineers out in the field that are working on infrastructure. It's key for the control room staff to have a clear understanding of what the engineer's doing. Are there areas of the network we need to power down or shut off or reroute supplies so that they can safely do maintenance on an area? And as the next slide shows, we can provide a similar view to that which we do in a contact center, but around contact history in the control room. And through the touchscreen interface, controllers can have the ability to listen to past conversations they've had throughout their shift, so that they can double check information that they may have discussed on a call. So whether they're talking about a particular area of pipeline or a particular high power cable, and they know that there's maintenance taking place in a certain period, and they need to contact that engineer and let them know that it's safe for them to continue. So it will help them coordinate, and that does two things really. It keeps the employees safe, but also it improves efficiency as well, because they can have easy access to the information they need to carry out their day job.
Yeah, there's a lot of information for these people to process, these companies to process, and the whole point of connecting these systems is so that you can get at that data. But it's also important to use that data, effectively, really turning it into actionable intelligence. So if you don't have those connected systems, obviously that's going to be a challenge. And as you can see here, leaders are more likely than followers to take advantage of this data that they have access to now. So they can utilize historical and real-time data so that their operators and representatives can make the best decisions possible based upon that information. Also, leaders are applying analytics so they can be more proactive with how they handle situations. And really, a proper analytics platform is one that's integrated across all enterprise systems. Historically, these companies have been focused for their operational concerns, applying analytics to it, but the same approach can be applied for their customer experience as well. Really, it's all about receiving vital information faster, turning that into actionable intelligence, and then acting on it, making the best decision possible. And the use of predictive analytics has really become essential among energy leaders to improve their performance, as this chart here shows. So this is how are they using predictive analytics. So there's a lot of ways, but some sample use cases for predictive analytics by energy and utilities firms include analyzing weather data to forecast the likelihood of potential service outage and asset damages. And really, such predictions help companies minimize unnecessary costs, mitigate operational risk, schedule appropriate levels of resources, as well as proactively communicate potential service outage issues to their customers. And this latter activity is helpful in establishing customer trust, as well as reducing the number of service requests that your clients make when they experience an outage, compared to instances when they are not proactively alerted of an upcoming outage due to something like a web. Energy and utilities firms can apply predictive analytics and increase both the operational side and the customer experience side. And the final area where leaders are differentiating themselves from their peers is when it comes to continuous improvement. And this is really a very common practice or carried out idea when it comes to the operational goals. But the same holds true when applied to a customer experience management program. Energy firms must identify the key objectives driving their CEM programs and measure how each activity influences these results. Common objectives include customer retention and positive brand sentiment. As noted earlier, establishing a dedicated CEM executive role is helpful, identifying the relevant performance measures to gauge success. Once the right metrics are determined, energy firms are recommended to also conduct root cause analysis to identify how specific activities like planned downtime due to asset maintenance influence these results. And really, this chart here in slide 39 shows that leaders are more likely than followers to have this continuous improvement mindset in place. It's really all about improving. Really, everyone can do a better job. So if you realize that, you'll be put in a much better position to succeed in the short and the long term.
Yeah, and I would really echo a lot of that. I mean, there are key things that monitoring and gathering analytics information can be useful for, and it can be keeping an eye on operations and make sure things are ticking over as they should be. But also it's around being able to make changes if the unexpected happens, and Ree was talking there about predictive analytics, but also looking at forecasting. So the event that something happens that is out of the ordinary, that requires us to make a change, is being able to understand in advance what the impact of that change would be, or what we can do to mitigate the circumstances and get things back on track again. And another key area then is monitoring your performance in terms of customer experience as well, but using the information that you gather to be specific about what areas of customer experience you're improving. And by that I mean, when you get customer experience ratings, what channels do they relate to? So looking again at the omni-channel environment, are you serving customers better through one method or another? And that's not always around assisted service, where a customer's actually talking to an agent, but it could be around the online service or the self-service that you provide as well. And an area of benefit there can be if you're accurately capturing why customers are contacting you, then one thing can be you can use that information to look at root cause analysis. If you're getting a lot of requests about a particular thing, why is that? Is there something we need to fix? But it can be if you're getting a lot of inquiries about maybe account information or the types of energy accounts that customers can subscribe to, then maybe you can improve the information that's available to them online about that so that they can actually find that themselves. And again, if customers can find that information that they're contacting you about themselves, then that's much more likely to drive them towards you as a new customer than if they have to go through the process of contacting you to find that out as well. So that can be of real benefit. So there's benefits in viewing information in real time and historically as well, because you can look at trends around the type of contacts you're getting and contact channel preferences as well. So really the next slide is just showing some samples of all the sorts of information that you can gather around customers and how you can pull that together. So that can be real-time where you're seeing visibility of what's going on right now within the contact center, for example, or it could be looking at a customer contact that's come in and the route they took, the people they spoke to and how you service those, what your service level fulfillment was like. So they can be performance things, but at the same time that can be coupled with what the customer experience was and how that related to who they spoke to and how their query was dealt with as well. So all this information that you gather can be very useful in helping keep customers and also entice new customers as well.
Yeah, Simon, you made a good management piece that I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, but I didn't follow up on. We see the same thing in our research. It's crucial to be able to manage these changes because the unforeseen always happens. So those companies that are prepared to adapt and react is really crucial. But you know, this takes us towards the end of the webinar, which is just I wanted to wrap up with some key takeaways just from what we've been presenting. Really, the energy and utilities industry is evolving. Customer satisfaction is becoming very important. If you remember from the beginning, it's almost doubled over the past 3 years as a pressure. It can't be overlooked any longer. It's important to create an executive level customer experience role. You got to get the company focused on serving customer needs as well as operational needs. It's really not it's not possible without having someone focused on it and dedicated to it. You want to ensure consistency with customer communications across multiple channels. We talked about the multi-channel. There's 4 channels on average per business. You got to make sure that you're consistent when contacting and talking to through these channels. Don't just capture data. You got to use it. You got to make sure that you're taking advantage of it and making the best decisions possible. We saw that leaders are much more likely to do that, turning it into actionable intelligence. Connected systems. So we talked about the need to connect the control center with the contact center. Really, it's crucial because manual systems and trying to switch back and forth between these systems really can't keep up with today's data demands. You got to make sure these systems are integrated and are interoperable. And then finally, that continuous improvement piece. Measure your performance and realize that you can always improve. If you're not measuring your performance, you're not going to know how you're doing. So this is really critical to complete that continuous improvement loop. So that takes us to the end, and I think this is when we'll open it up for that opportunity for Q&A. I'd like to thank you, everyone who attended.
Yeah, thank you. So everyone can go ahead and submit their questions through the questions tool in the GoToWebinar platform. And we have a few that have come in. We have about 5 minutes to answer some questions. What types of data is most value or are most valuable to share between the contact center and the control room? Maybe Simon, you could take a stab at that one.
Yeah, I mean, I think one key thing is around outage management and outage planning. I mean, that's a key thing to share between the two. And a simple thing may just be that, and this may link into some, could link it to GIS software as well. But for example, if a customer calls in and they're just talking about a general account inquiry, but you can see from the information that there's outage planned in their area in the upcoming time, then it's great service for the agent in the contact center to be able to tell them about that proactively whilst they're on the phone, for example. But it doesn't necessarily have to be shared between the two to see benefits. And I think I mentioned this before when I was talking, that around outage management and outage planning, if proactive notifications could be sent out to customers, then that can have a direct impact on the amount of contact that then comes back into the contact center. So if you do tell customers about what's going on and what's happening, they're much less likely to then try and contact you to find out what's going on because you've let them know. So you can actually use proactive notifications as a way of contact avoidance, if you like, where you're reducing the inbound demand on the contact center because you're keeping customers informed.
Great. This one I'll direct to you first, Reed. What's the best first step to take towards moving towards an omni-channel customer service environment?
Yeah, so there's a lot of steps that companies have taken, and Aberdeen's done a lot of research on the omni-channel and what's needed. I think if we think back to that slide I presented, though, making sure that you're delivering a consistent message through these channels is going to be really important. It's an important first step. If you think back, 88% of best-in-class companies say that they're actively doing that, while only 45% of the leaders, and even worse, 30% of the followers are doing this. So it's really important to make sure that there's that consistency first when going for that omni-channel approach.
Simon?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, I think providing consistency of brand across those different channels is important as well. And also understanding the customer demographics, so how your customers have a preference for contacting you, and some of that can be around actually doing research into the customers and understanding what their contact preferences would be. So that kind of feeds back into the customer relationship management as well, because if you can start building up a profile of what your customers' contact preferences are, then that really sort of drives where you'll see the most benefit from introducing new channels, for example.
Nice. Simon, you've spent a decent amount of time in control room environments installing our platforms, so I'll direct this one to you. What's a good metric to measure in the control room to improve service?
Yeah, that's an interesting one actually, because typically in a contact center environment you'd be looking at things like service levels and time to answer and average queue times and things like that. And I think there is an element of that is important in the control room, particularly if you have engineers that are looking to do remedial maintenance work or work on jobs, then it's important that their contacts get handled in a good time. But from what I've seen, a lot of the things that are important to measure is actually overall sort of project timescales. So for example, if there is outage planning done, that the overall activity is achieved within the time it was planned. So really kind of minimizing the impact and the windows for change. So it tends to take on a bigger role than just measuring single contacts and single interactions when you're looking at change projects or maintenance work, for example, in a control room. You're looking at service impact and minimizing the time on that and making sure you're getting things done in your change windows.
That's great. Thanks for the commentary on that. That brings us to the top of the hour, and we'll go ahead and finish up the webinar here. So thank you, Reed and Simon, for giving us the time to share that content. Thank you, everybody, for joining. The slides and the webinar will be sent out in the days following the webinar as we get the content prepared for you and the recording prepared for you. So if you have any extra questions,